William Booth was one of the few ordained clergy in the ranks of the early army. Bramwell was never ordained. Catherine could not be ordained. Springing directly from Booth's concern about the Methodists settling down into a priest and people model of church, the Salvation Army was conceived as a practical expression of the priesthood of all believers. The creation of a sacramentally ordained clergy would cut directly into that understanding, and formal ordination of women would not be recognised by the church. So, consistent with the Army's non-sacramental approach to rites and ceremonies, the distinction between officers and soldiers developed as functional rather than sacramental. Imitating the military, paid full-time Salvationists were commissioned officers. Local activists became local officers, performing duties as determined by the commissioned officer in charge. One illustration from Australia may serve to make the point. During the 1890s, the Australasian commander, Commissioner Coombs, launched a number of semi-permanent touring combinations, variously known as the Austral Guards, the Federal Guards, and an all-women's combination known as the Austral Lasses. Coombs requested that John Sampson, a young officer who was a gifted vocalist and harpist, be appointed to one of those touring combinations. Coombs also requested that for the duration of Sampson's appointment with the Guards Band, that, as he would be functioning as a bandsman, he should therefore surrender his officer's commission and resume the commission at the end of his term. As it turned out, Sampson did not resume his officer commission for almost 5 years. This functional distinction served the Army well in giving soldiers an active place in ministry. Running a corps with all the protocols and diplomacy necessary for congregational management fell largely on local officers. The commissioned officer was not appointed to the corps, but to the town or district. The commissioned officer's function was outwards, organising the principal missional purposes of the movement. The local officer's function was that of internal management and maintenance, all flowing through the principal local officer, the Corps Sergeant Major. Internally, local officers were encouraged by the Army to take on many responsibilities traditionally the preserve of clergy, including regular preaching assignments. Corps officer appointments tended to be of short duration, sometimes only a few months. Longer than 2 years was exceptional. Local officers, however, were there for the long haul, but even their appointments were subject to regular review and renewal. At higher territorial command levels, commissioned officer appointments tended to be longer, even longer than they are today. In the 40 years between 1880 and 1920, Australia had only 6 national commanders. This reflected the strategic command function of senior leadership as distinct from the more managerial role of today. That is, Salvationists looked to headquarters as an active command focus rather than simply the local corps. When ordination for officers was introduced by General Arnold Brown in 1978, it was in recognition that in many countries Army officers were now functioning as local clergy, but were not being formally recognised as such by other local churches. The unintended consequence of such a decision may be significant. What does it say about the Army's conception of officership? Is it now largely that of traditional pastoral ministry and maintenance rather than external missional leadership? If officers now have priestly attributes, what then does that do to the concept of soldiership? What is its sacramental status? Are soldiers now simply congregational members with uniforms, entitled to sit back and be passively ministered to by those who are ordained to dispense the gifts? What does this say about officer attitude towards soldiers? Have we inadvertently returned to the very model of ministry Booth designed the Army to prevent? Has soldiership, as traditionally understood by the Army, now effectively lost its meaning? Have we inadvertently put at risk a vital dimension of what we were raised up to be?